myself again. But it's the only...
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It's Wednesday night, which means it's retro night, so I'm joined by George, by Steve Wilkinson, Steve Hasty, Mitch, and welcome back to Stu Penman. Good evening, lads.
Good evening.
Good to see you all, and I just want to say a big thank you to newworkwear.com, specialists in the supply and branding of clothing for the workplace. They have agreed to come on and sponsor us for December. They're also offering 15% discount on all clothing, embroidery and print to NUFC Matters viewers in December. There's no setup or fees or minimum spend required. Just use the code MATTERS15 at checkout. So newworkwear.com, big thank you to you for sponsoring us again this month. As I say, they're offering 15% on all clothing and embroidery and print to all NUFC Matter viewers. So pop on their website, have a look. If you fancy something and buy it, use the code MATTERS15 at checkout. I've stuck that in the live chat. And a big thank you to them, and also a big thank you to our ongoing sponsor qtechshop.co.uk. They have once again agreed to sponsor us again this month. Big shout out to them. They do help us, of course, with all the t-shirts and with the mugs and stuff like that, and they're makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend in Newcastle. They've done these wonderful Supermac t-shirts which they are selling via newcastlelegends.com. $14.99 for a Supermac t-shirt and $9.99 for a Supermac mug. Two nice little collector's items if you're a fan of Supermac, who of course will be joining me tomorrow night with John Gibson at the usual time of 6 o'clock. So tonight we are looking back, lads, at Everton. Games against Everton and Newcastle, and as always, there's always plenty games to talk about. We'll be running our usual features of players that played for both teams and celebrity fans of Everton. But George, we will come to you first, mate, for your first recollection of Newcastle versus Everton.
Well, I don't think it'll surprise Neil which one I'm going to pick. Normally I pick a one way back, which is more in my era, but this one's the one where it was at Everton. And as usual, I hired a big car and took my 4 passengers in the back with their goods, and we went off and had a fantastic day at Everton. And I'm embarrassed to say I've forgotten what the bloody date was. 2010.
It's the one I'm thinking about.
It is exactly. Anyway, I hired the usual vehicle from Atlas Hire at the top of Station Road in Wallsend, and he used to keep us a nice big Vauxhall Survivor, and he knew I liked the turbo diesel because it flew. I mean, it was like driving a racing car, and the lads were in the back in the usual 7-seater. They 4 spread themselves out with the cool boxes in the middle, containing lemonade and Coke and all the usual stuff, and off we went. Now, as it happens, on the way to the match, Tim Gleave, who's our friend, he comes from Warrington, so his mum laid on a sandwich lunch, and we went there first on my way to Goodison Park and had our sandwich lunch. Now, like you can imagine, Michael and Frecky, of course, when there were sandwiches left after the lunch, they proceeded to fill the cool boxes with what was left over for the journey home. So we had even more stuff in the cool boxes than we had before. We parked at the far side of Stanley Park like you do, and then walked round the park because everybody said you don't cut across the park, and we didn't. And had to walk round the ground and went to the souvenir shop in the little churches that's in the corner of Goodison Park that isn't closed in. Not closed in because it blocks the spire, apparently. And we had a really good start, then got into the ground, and it was heaving with magpies, and there was a kind of atmosphere I can't remember for a long time. From the 10 minutes before kick-off, right till 20 minutes after the final whistle, they never stopped chanting. And every time the Everton fans tried to get something going, the Magpies drowned them out. It was an incredible atmosphere all through half-time. They never stopped. And so everybody was on high door. And then lo and behold, a lad from Daisy Hill, who was about 2 seats in front of me, decided he wanted to moon the Everton fans, and so he up he got, down went his strides, and he mooned the Everton fans. Well, unfortunately for him, there was a big policeman on the cinder track. When I mean big, he was 6'6" and 6'6" wide, sergeant, and he had what they call a pace stick under his arm, like a big baton, and the baton he pointed straight at this lad. And we were saying to him, he's got you, you've got to get out of the way. So we all started changing seats, swapping seats with them, and so it would confuse them all. Bear in mind, I'm chairman of the North Tyneside bench still at that time, and I'm involved in changing these seats so this laddie doesn't get picked up by the police. Well, they came, and the three coppers that were sent up by the sergeant were discussing what they were going to do. Got to the point where they were talking about taking 4 rows of wood down to the cells, down under the stand. And at that point, the laddie got a pang of conscience and said, "No, it was me. And they took the laddie away and off he went. And as I say, the chanting just went on and on and on and on. Straight after half time, and everybody was talking about Ben Arthur because they weren't sure what we'd got, who he was, what he was like. He came out, and about a minute after half time, bang, a beautiful goal to make it 1-0 for us. Then after that, we just dug our heels in. Great match. But what I do remember more than anything, and I've been to a lot of games, I can't remember an atmosphere that was better than that one from the Newcastle fans, because from start to finish, they never stopped. And as I say, every time the Evertonians tried to get something going, they got drowned out again by Black and White Army and all that sort of thing. Absolutely fantastic atmosphere. Eventually, when they let us out, of course, we go downstairs and start making our way back to the car. And lo and behold, it was there at the bottom of the stairs, but the laddie who they'd taken away for mooning. And so I said to them, "Well, what did they do?" They said, "Oh, well, they just locked us in a cell." And then this inspector came along and cautioned us and told us to behave myself, and they threw us out. He says, "I think they were glad to get rid of us," and I'm sure they would be, as they wouldn't want to stay there. Pardon?
I don't think he had any shoes on either. I think his shoes had got lost somewhere along the line.
Along the line, dragging him down the stairs. He was barefooted. So anyway, we made our way back to the car, and I think it was Frecky said to me, "Have you tried this?" And I said, "Tried what?" He says, "It'll waken you up for driving back." So I said, "What the hell is it?" He says, "It's a thing called Red Bull." Well, I'd never had Red Bull, and I didn't know anything about Red Bull. And I tasted it, and it wasn't bad. So I downed this can of Red Bull. And no sooner had I finished one, he'd give us another one. And I thought, "Oh, that's champion." My God, 20 minutes on the road, I could see everything in double vision. I couldn't get my foot off the accelerator. I mean, the adrenaline was flowing, to put it mildly. However, we got home. By God, I paid for it the next day. For a teetotaler, I bet I had a worse hangover than many of the drinkers did after 2 cans of Red Bull. But what a fantastic day it was, and always enjoyable with the lads. I mean, I'm the chauffeur, but I got more out of it than just being the chauffeur. I had an absolutely fantastic time. But as I say, that was me one and only experience of Red Bull. And he was right. It did wake us up. I didn't have any trouble seeing. But we flew back. There's no doubt about that. So
Red Bull gives you wings.
And we won 1-0 and all.
Aye. Can I just furnish this a little bit extra as well? The other point that you forgot is that was Joss's first away game as well.
Oh yes, sorry, yes.
And so that was like my first realisation, like when my granddad and my dad used to take me, that was like the baton being passed for an away game. And what an introduction to an away game he had. He had it all. He had us getting hammered in the back of the bloody car, lads stripping off in the crowd, getting arrested, a wonder goal. And then he was sick and out the car on the way home, and he was the only bloody one who was sick because he was travel sick. So it's like, welcome to away days.
Actually, what I'd finish off with is I was joking about being chairman of the North Tyneside bench. At that time, I was doing a lot of work with the Home Office, and one of my best friends at the Home Office on the committee I was on was the chairman of the Liverpool bench, Jean Witherspoon, Lady Witherspoon she was. And I'd just running through my mind, God, fancy if I'd been brought up before her on a Monday morning in Liverpool. It would have been wonderful. Thank God it didn't happen. What a fantastic day. And as I say, a day to remember as far as I'm concerned. I've been to lots of matches, but that one, the atmosphere was unbelievable.
Fantastic memories, and Spenny reckons we should write a book of your stories, George. You've got plenty, which is fantastic. Steve, good evening, mate. Over to you. I hope George hasn't stolen your first story like he did last week.
I've got extra ones this week. I thought he was going to do the olden days, and then last week he put one in.
That's next, Steve. That's next.
There's a few games I was looking at, but I'll do a jolly one first because I've got one negative one. But a game, 1997, was a memorable game, which was I think it was Kenny Dalglish's first game taking over from Keegan, and it's it was everybody was distressed that the Keegan era ended, and I think if you remember rightly, we just walloped Tottenham 7-1, and Keegan couldn't take hammering teams that couldn't hammer in the top 6 every week. He was sick of it, and it was too much for him. But what I think we thought when Dalglish came in, things were going to be continuation of the success, and obviously we know it didn't work. But we got off to a good start in the game against Everton on the January 97. If anybody was there at that game, there's a chance you were. Gary Speed, the late great Gary Speed, put them ahead in the first couple of minutes, and we just pressed on and tried. But it all happened in the last quarter of an hour. We got 4 goals. Ferdinand, Robert Lee scored. Alan Shearer got a penalty when Tino was brought down. Can you imagine Tino coming on as a sub for Peter Beardsley? What sort of, when you think about the player squad we've got now, that you could actually take Peter Beardsley off and Tino come on as a sub, and Tino was doing one of his mazy runs, and he got chopped down the penalty area. Beardsley Shearer rammed home the penalty, and then Robbie Elliott scored at the end. Robbie Elliott things. So I think we thought we're getting off to a great start with Dalglish, but it started to go downhill. Although we did qualify for Europe that season because the momentum Keegan had got up was there, and I think did we finish 5th? I think, or something like that, or we might have even got higher and got into the Champions League.
Yeah, Dalglish's season. I think we finished in the first season where he took. Well, when he took over, when he took over from Keegan, we finished second. We finished second two seasons in a row, and everyone was calling it a bad season.
Yeah, but it was downhill from there. And obviously, he sold. Was it Ginola, wasn't it? That he sold, and then brought in Des Hamilton from the midfield as just a.
So Celez, Celez went as well.
From somebody who you thought was going to take it. Build on what Keegan had done, with the track record he'd had at Liverpool and everything. It was a disappointment. But that game was, still in my mind. The finish at the end when we scored all those goals late on. So that's my first one.
You talk about that era, which prompts me to mention, a game in that era, and it's a game that I took my brother Rob to his first game. Mark Byers has just mentioned it. Actually, he was on my bus that I organised from Hewitt Metro, and that was my brother's first ever away game. So he had the delight of getting a few drinks on the bus, and then getting some drinks when he got to the bar outside the ground, and then getting a few drinks when we got in the ground. So he was absolutely comatose. Actually, fell asleep during the game. Never saw any of the game. I did wake him up when Ian Rush got his only goal for Newcastle United, which of course got us through to in the FA Cup quarter final. Wonderful day out for me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Mark, I hope you did too. My brother knows nothing about it. So that's my first recollection of Newcastle United against Everton tonight. Steve, what about yours? Steve Hasty.
Recollections. I remember back in '68 at school, and that was the first time I'd come across Everton, and it was the year that they won the league. And I think it was 68 or 69. I think the 69 season was like City won it in 68, and they were one of those teams again because they were in the shadow of like a lot of clubs in those days. You won the league and then you drifted away. There was never like a dominating team around about that time, and I must admit. A lot of the clubs that were followed, a lot of the teams that we knew were like northern teams. You knew about Burnley because there was a connection with Wallsend. Those type of teams. You knew about West Ham because of the World Cup and the connections there was there. You knew about Man United because of the connection with Bobby Charlton in the North East. But Everton was never a team that was really on your radar as a kid. And then, of course, they won the league out of nowhere. And I remember being at St Columbus in Wallsend, which was the old school by the Forum at the time, and just going into school on, I think it was like, I think they won the league on like a Wednesday night or something like that, And again, as a kid, you couldn't understand how there'd been like even a game played in midweek in the league and that type of thing. It was just like, a real anticlimax that the league had been won. You hadn't seen it on Match of the Day. That happened when it happened, and those type of things. That was my first recollection of Everton. And then I think the next time I was sort of when I really got into watching football, I think one of the biggest disappointments was the game when we got beat 4-0. I think it was around about 87. I think that was the season first game of the season, and I think we sold Rob.
That was 88.
Was it
88? It was the relegation season, 88, 89, lads. Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Neil MacDonald was one of our up-and-coming players, and we sold him to Everton. And then we played them first game of the season. We'd had there's the photograph there, of Andy Thorne. We had that team. They'd gone out and spent a little bit of money, and we got twanged 4 out. First game of the season, and it just seemed to go downhill from then, So I've never really had much of a thing for Everton. I've got a couple of good pals now through the food bank, for the work we've been doing. I've got Rob Daniels and Dave Kelly, who set up fan supporting food banks along with Ian Byrne of Liverpool fan group. And they're great lads, and we've been over and we've met them and went to Dublin and met some of the Everton Irish, as they call themselves, I think. And had a really good time with myself and Bill Corcoran and John, who runs the West End Food Bank. So we've got to know some of those lads, and they always come up. St James's, they always bring produce and to the stand outside the ground on match days, and they're a really decent bunch of people, But in terms of games, I think that 4-0 just kind of set the rot for an awful long time with me with regard to Everton, if I'm perfectly honest.
Great stuff. Neil, your first recollection of Newcastle versus Everton?
Well, I've had both my thunders stolen here. Obviously, with my dad's tale about the 1-0 with Ben Arthur. And I was going to mention the game Steve's just mentioned, because that was my first away game on my own, or with the lads.
Well, what was that like? What was that like?
Well, we thought we were going to win the league. We'd made these signings. You know what we're like, ever the optimists. We've made all these signings and would look good the season before, and this is it. We're going to win the league. And then Tony Cotty hits a hat-trick, and we're all looking at each other like, oh, this is grim. And it just never got better, did it? It actually got worse from there that season. I think that cemented the melancholy and the hopeless optimist in it, to actually go there and still have the belief after seeing that shambles, and then running back to the buses through Stanley Park as quick as you could, But it's all part of understanding the away day experience really at that time in the 80s, 90s, or certainly in the 80s, and having the ability to spread your wings as a young man, learning the ropes, so to speak. But yeah, it was just the fact that so many were, and so many of my mates felt that, we'd made these signings, this is the team, this is going to be us, we're going to be brilliant, and we just weren't. we just weren't, and it's learning the hard Newcastle lesson about being built up to be knocked down. You know.
Can I just add something about that game as well? I think that was about the first time they did a beanback. We used to, I forget what they're called, the bar that it used to be behind the goal, and then they moved it in the middle. Was it 1892 bar or something like that? Because of the same excitement that you're talking about there, Mitch, that it was packed, and I was in this bar, and the game was beanback. It wasn't very good quality, as you can imagine, in those days, but it was. They used to do beanbacks quite a lot for when you couldn't get to away games, and that was packed in there with the same expectations, and like we got 4-0, and it was just all horrible, you know.
Well, you think about what it would added a goalkeeper and a centre back that both won the FA Cup, both being touted for England, was signed 2 wingers who were exciting at the time and who came with reputation and could supply your front line. And you're thinking, this is it. We've got the last pieces of the jigsaw. We could contend for something here. And then Everton rocked up and absolutely handed with our arse. And it was like, yeah, okay, thanks for that.
Yeah, okay, Stu. Good evening, mate. Over to you. Your first recollection, mate, of the matches between Newcastle and Everton.
Well, I'm not going last next week because all my stories have gone.
Who's talking to here? Come on, yeah.
Well, no, there was two 4-0 games. I'm sure each and every one of us. All right, you prick.
Who's the guy in the middle here?
Who we got here?
That's
Coming
Bobby
in.
the prick.
Don't worry, you're translating. That's out. This is Bobby.
Hello, Bobby.
He's come to say hello to Stu. Oh shit! I'm sorry.
Hi, swear, Bobby.
Hi, Stu.
Hello, Robert. How are you? I'm doing fine, thanks.
I just took Mitch down a little pint of nectar, okay?
I'll translate. He just got Mitch a pint.
He's translating. Wait, carry on, Stu. Sorry, mate.
Thanks, Mitch. Okay, go on, Stu.
Get rid of Bobby. There was one a couple of seasons before when. Actually, when I go to Dubai, I stay at Bobby's house. So I have to be nice.
No, I don't want to.
But a couple of seasons before, though, it was the Boxing Day, and we got beat 4-0 then as well. And that was the year Everton won the league, 86-87. So it must have been Boxing Day 86. Trevor Stevens scored twice. And as when I moved to Dubai, I bumped into Trevor Stevens at the Dubai World Cup of racing and ended up becoming pals with him. But then the one that everyone remembers is the 4-0. But what everyone didn't mention, what nobody mentioned was, yes, we got the front line, which was the smallest front line, which we've talked about in the past. But they only bought these players from the money that we got from selling Gaza. You know, and you take somebody like Gaza out, it's even you're taking 3 players at least out of it. You know, and it was crazy how they did it. But I mean, that's another one. But there's a cup game, I think it was one of the lads on the messages that come up. They mentioned the cup game away, and you mentioned the one in '98 when we got to the final, Steve. Yeah. When Rush scored. Yeah, it was raining that day, if I remember right. But there was one 3 years earlier, and against Everton away, and it was a quarter final. And as usual, the normal undiminished belief it's our year, we're going to win the cup. And I used to go to Liverpool a lot, as I've previously mentioned. And I went down with Frankie, old Frankie Spencer. And we stayed up with friends' house. There was a good group of us, but we went down without tickets because that was quite the norm there. You'd travel down to away games and you'd get tickets, or you'd pay in, or you'd get in the home end or something. And it was a quarter final of the cup, so we went out on the night before, well, the day before. So I don't know how well any of you know Liverpool, but there's an Irish bar called Pogue Mahones, which is Gaelic for kiss my arse. Right? And we've been in there all day, to the point when you're drinking and drinking and drinking, where you can't drink anymore. So we went to the bar, and Frankie's just standing there, and you could see he was getting paler. And he's just let over his shoulder and vomited a projectile as well. And then just turned back round again and asked for a lager, as if no one had seen him, and the bar was packed, you know. And so the doorman's come over, and he's like, I'm throwing your mate out as well. No. And the barman's come around to clean his mess up. And he went, I'll clear it. I went, see, if he clears it up, can he stay in? Because we had a rate of good crack during the day and everything. And he says, as long as he tidies it up, yes, we'll let him stay in, but he's not getting any more alcohol. So I've got the pint. I went and joined the group again. Sat back down. His doorman's come over. He says, I'm sorry, your mate's getting thrown out. And I says, what for? He went, just look at him. I'm not going to do this Scouse accent. It was just look at the state of him. And he's dancing with his mop. And then he thinks he's on karaoke with his mop. So that's that. So he got sent home early and we carried on. The next day we're up to Goodison and there's a bar on the corner pin, if I remember right. It was called the Corner Pin. And it was a notorious blue nose bar. And I went in there looking for tickets and it was just ram-packed with Newcastle fans. And no one had any tickets. So we went outside, all these buzzards about Scousers, yeah, I got tickets, mate. And we needed 3. There was a lad whose house was staying at Ginger Tim from Hull, who's my daughter's godfather now. We needed 3 and we asked for 3 together. And they very cleverly showed, look, they're together. And they ended up being, they weren't together, and they were in the Gladys Road end or whatever it's named, the Everton home support. So there was a 2 and a 1. And Tim's like, I'm not going with Frankie. Like, he says, there's no way. He says, there's no way he's that going away on my own. So I said, right. So I had to give Frankie a stern chat and don't speak during the game because they'll know your accent. And there's only 2 of us. There's thousands in that stand. And we're sitting down in Newcastle, playing as well as normal. And then a good friend of the show, Lee Clark, broke forward. And as we know, he used to get nicknamed Jigsaw, didn't he? Because he went to pieces in the box. And as he went on this mazy run, I've just stood up forgetting where I was after warning Frankie not to say anything. Go on, Floggy, son. It's up my voice. And before I realised where I was, and I have to try and sit back down, well, you're getting the pies and the spit and the coins thrown up here. So it was similar to your events, Steve, at QPR. We got taken in the front and then marched towards the Newcastle fans and got thrown into there. So that was a good one. We got beat. Like Dave Watson scored. They were called the Dogs of War at the time, I think, Everton. Now they had Barry Horn and that playing for them, and they weren't an attractive team to watch. But they ended up winning the cup that season, and we should have beat them in that game. Another sob story from the Newcastle faithful.
There's a book in them as well, by the way. George,
no, I just want to mention one thing, Steve. Sorry.
Yes, go on.
About Spenny. For those who watch the show regularly, it was mentioned last night by yourself, but I'll mention it tonight if it's all right. He's doing I think it's a 100-kilometre walk or something like that, isn't it? In 7 days in a week. And he's raising money for three schools that look after children with special needs and disabilities. And I know George has already donated. I have, and a couple of other lads have. And if you find him on Twitter, it's at STAC71. And anything that anyone can give, it's for a great cause. And he's a governor of the 3 schools, and he's doing this walk. About time he did some exercise, but he's doing this walk to get himself fit. So if anyone can donate to it, anything helps. His target's 300 quid, so surely there's enough generosity on the viewers today to get us to that.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Good luck, Spenny. 100 was it 100 kilometre? No, 100k or something he's doing. 100k, did you say?
100k walk.
Yeah.
Over 7 days or something, I think.
Yeah, good luck to him.
I'm sure we'll be...
Great stuff. I'm sure we'll be giving that a mention for the rest of the week. So good luck, Spenny. I hope you reach your target. John asks a question to you, George. So we're coming back to you anyway. He says, does George remember the Everton goalie Gordon West being sent off at home, punching Jim Eiley in 1968? He says, I had a good view behind the goal at the Leazes end. Thacker was the referee, well known at the time. So I can see Steve looking at his list as well. So we'll go to you first, George. Can you remember that and give us your next memory?
I can, and the interesting thing about West is it's a good kind of comparison to Pickford now. You know how the fans can wind Pickford up. Well, the fans at that time could wind Gordon West up, and so did the players, and that's how we dropped Jim Eiley. He was just getting a lot of verbals and he couldn't take it. He just went off his rocker and dropped Jim Eiley. Yes, I remember it vividly, but from the other end of the ground.
George, was that the game? Was that the game where?
Do you want us to go on, Steve?
Can I just ask about that game there that you're talking about? Because was that the game they lost 3-0 and there was riots? Or was that the year before?
No, that was the year before.
There was a lot of bother at one game. I remember.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right,
Good
carry
stuff. Well, yeah. Go on, George.
Well, the next one is the one from nearer my era than others. Is 1959 when we beat them 8-2. And of course, the big thing for me was that in the team, our team, there were lads who I occasionally played with, because sometimes played in the thirds and the fourths, and one or two of them, like George Heslop, had just come out of the ends, and Jackie Bell had just come out of the ends, having been in the Youth Cup winning team. So it was quite a fascinating thing for me to see people actually knew, and actually giving Everton an absolute thrashing. It was 8-2, but it could have been a cricket score. And of course, add to that some of the class players that we had at the time. Len White got a hat trick, and it was a good hat trick. It was 2 feet and a header, all in the same thing. I mean, for a little man, Len White could climb, and yes. Oh, and wearing the famous Charlie Mitten strip, of course, with the black and white top socks and the very short shorts that we all had to wear in those days. Mitten actually designed that himself. And those socks were bloody terrible, because the weaving in those days, they couldn't do it in one. They had to put stitch the stripe bit on the top, so there was a ridge. So when you tied your sock on, you ended up with a red line around your bloody knee, because it was uncomfortable. The shirt was good. I think the shirt was good, but and the shorts were canny, except they were so short. They used to make you wince occasionally. But Len White scored a hat trick that day, and it was fantastic. And the other player who stood out, of course, he did most of the assists, was Ivor Altchurch. Brilliant. Like a lot of players, we bought Ivor Altchurch at the wrong end of his career. You know, he was just coming to the end of his career. We should have bought him 5 or 6 years earlier, when he was at the peak of his career. But of course, typical Newcastle, we waited until he was cheap enough for us to buy him, and he was already on his way down. And then, of course, add to that, in another one who was setting them up, so to speak, was a little blonde lad called George Easton, who was already starting to make waves at St James's Park about salary and all this sort of thing. And of course, eventually he was the one that broke the salary cap when he went to Arsenal. He took them to court and won the battle. They said that the salary cap was illegal, and he went to Arsenal for his big handout. But they were all in that team that beat Everton 8-2. Interesting thing was, it was only 24,000 at the match. Now, I don't remember an Everton match where the crowd was as small as that. But it was just brilliant to be in the paddock watching the team literally whitewash somebody, and it happened to be Everton on that day. The other thing was, of course, the captain was Jimmy Schooler. Now, Jimmy Schooler came close to getting sent off. In fact, and I think nowadays he would have got sent off, because he put his studs down the back of one of the Everton forwards. I think it was Hurst, the lad called Hurst, and he really raked his studs down the back of his leg, and gave him a nudge with his knee as he went down in front of him as well. But that was Jimmy Schooler. He's really a hard man, legs like tree trunks, but off the field, an absolute gentleman, I can assure you.
Great stuff. Great recollections as always, George, and lots of people enjoying this as usual. Terry McCarthy's pitched in with the year of the riots was February 1967. My first game that I saw. Yeah. So Steve, over to you, Steve Wilkinson.
Right, yeah. I'm gonna upset Supermac with this one. He might mention it tomorrow night. It was during the Gordon Lee era, and a game Everton were beaten 5-0 in 1976, and McDonald played in that game, but he didn't score. But Alan Gowran got a hat trick, and it was quite strange, because I'm going to come out of the closet and say I was actually a Gordon Lee fan, which will really upset Supermac. But it wasn't so much that the football was negative, but we actually did score a few goals. We beat them 5-0 in January. We'd already put 5 past Norwich and put 5 past Wolves before that.
Not pop.
And the partnership Malcolm had with Gowland was quite prolific, and Gowland got a hat-trick on that particular game that I'm talking about there in that one. The following year, they beat them 4-1 as well, and McDonald was away then, obviously, and Gowland continued to score, and we beat them 4-1 with Gowland scoring twice again. And it was really just that I can't remember too much about the game, other than the fact that you were enjoying goals going in, despite the fact the football was quite negative. I don't know if George or anybody was there at that time, but we're disappointed about some of the defensive style that he had. But I think the whole thing about the Gordon Lee, once he sold McDonald, that sort of split everybody, split the fans, split the players in the dressing room.
Yeah.
It went downhill from there. But it looked at the time that first season, we got to the cup final, the League Cup final that year as well, and probably would have done well in the FA Cup. I think we had a lot of injuries just before the FA Cup quarter final when we played Derby, and we had to put almost a reserve team out, so that stopped a good run then. But I think we were doing reasonably well, and that Everton game just after the New Year was one where we're banging the goals in again.
Okay, good stuff, Steve. Steve Hasty, over to you again, mate.
Yeah. Just catching up on Steve there. I mean, I think it was that game was the game that sealed Gordon Lee getting the job at Everton.
Even though it was another year.
You're right. Yeah, because that's where he ended up going, and you're right about the way we were playing. We played some decent football, but we played some shocking football, and you could tell. I mean, Malcolm's heart was just not in it, was it, when he had Lee? I'm gonna bring the game. I'm gonna bring it a little bit forward. I'm gonna bring it to the season before. I'll leave the one that everybody would probably want to talk about, which we're about to mention later on. But in March 2002, we absolutely hammered them 6-2. I think they took the lead. Ferguson scored. They took a 1-0 lead, and that was the worst thing they could have done. And it was the style of football we played in that game. We had Dyer, who was just bombing on. We had Jennings, who was bombing on. We had Solano, who was so gifted. We had a goal from Andy O'Brien. We had a rare goal that probably, very few Newcastle fans will remember. What a goal from Carl Court as well in that particular game. It ended up 6-2, and then I think the last goal was Olivier Bernard. Andy O'Brien scored, but Olivier Bernard got a tap in as well from a fantastic run by Loire. Now I mean, we were playing some beautiful flowing football at that particular time, and I think that game that was coming up towards the end of the season. We were still in the fight for the Champions League. Robson is the manager, and we're looking for Champions League place. And it was a great team. It was Robson were playing really, really decent football, and it was just so exciting in those days, wasn't it? The whole atmosphere that you were getting. You felt as though they were really onto something. We'd had the disappointment of Hullett, even though he got a cup final. We'd had the disappointment of Dalglish, even though he got us 2 second places. We'd had the disappointment of losing Keegan. And then when Robson came and, some of the football that he had us playing was absolutely fantastic. And I think that game, that particular performance, the 6-2 win, epitomised what we thought was going to be, the catalyst for probably another 10 years. He was going to set the scene, and then Shearer would take over as manager when Bobby eventually retired or moved upstairs, and we'd had it looked as though all the words seemed to be that this was the start of something special. There was a period going to be built where we're going to have a succession in place. Robson moving on to Shearer, and it didn't quite work out like that. But fantastic time, Stephen, and a great goal. A great game to win 6-2.
Okay, good stuff. Mitch, your next recollection?
Staying in the same year, 2002, but coming a little bit later into the next season. When when we beat Everton 2-1. And the thing everybody will remember about that game is a volley from a certain Alan Shearer. The ball, we were 1-0 down from Kevin Campbell, I believe. And then they had Yobo sent off. And then we just took the game over. And the goalkeeper, who I think was Tommy Wright. Tommy Wright?
Richard Wright.
Richard Wright. Thank you, Richard Wright. Had a blinder. He was saving everything. And then there was a long ball pumped forward, got to Robert, who lifted it up, header from Amiobi, and Shearer hit it first time from about 20 yards. And that is, you can keep your Brazilian samba, you can keep your Dutch masters, you can keep your German Wunder kids. That is the best volley you will ever see hit on a ground anywhere in the world ever. And from the minute he left his foot, that was going in. And that's what you call a proper howitzer. And I think all of them would have taken 1-1 at that time. But then 89 minutes, Bellamy pops up, gets inside the box, hits a shot, and the keeper who'd been saving everything all day palms it into the back of his own net at the near post. You couldn't write it. But I think what that game epitomised was the spirit of the team underneath Sir Bobby. They never gave up. And I think if you look at how many goals we scored in the last 10 minutes under Sir Bobby, it's ridiculous. Because he had them going. Constant. And for me, that goal, I could watch it all day long and repeat. It's just ridiculous. And I think I've seen an interview with Shearer where he says, you know, he doesn't even understand himself why he hit it first time. He just did. He knew he had time to control it and do something else with it, but he just absolutely hammered it. And what a strike. What an absolute strike. Yeah, so that's my next one. You can't take that away from Shearer ever. Yeah. And if anybody hasn't seen it, hunt it out on YouTube and enjoy probably one of the best goals you'll ever see.
I think what you've forgotten there, Mitch, as well, was that you saw actually talking about Robson, you saw some great game management in that game because he made a double substitution.
Yes.
Only 10 minutes earlier. He took a defender off, he took Colwell off, and he brought Amiobi on to push him up front, and he went beyond Shearer. And he also took Gary Speed off, and he brought Hugo Viana on. And that double substitution, because they were winning 1-0, but they were down to 10 men and had been hanging on to a grim death. That made that extra bit of energy and that little bit of change, that little tweak made all the difference. Yeah. Because they made a substitution at the same time or just after, because they brought a certain Wayne Rooney on. And I think that was the first time I'd seen Wayne Rooney. And I also, if my memory serves me right, I think at the end of the game, Shearer swapped shirts with Rooney. And it was Shearer sort of like, you know, everybody was going on about Wayne Rooney and he was going to be a fantastic player. I wonder if Rooney's still got that shirt. I wonder if he's got it up in his room somewhere, you know.
Stu, over to you for your next recollection.
Well, there's a few to choose from, but I'm wary of the clock. So there was a 3, because we used to get Everton a lot at home over Christmas time, didn't we? And we had the 3-2, which ended up, as it was, as Pardew's last game. And I had my son who I've just been to visit for this. He was only a young'un at the time. And I took with the Players' Lounge and Yossi Perez from Tenerife as well. And I knew Yossi because I could speak a bit Spanish with him. So when I speak to him, he said something to me boy. And my son answered back in fluent Spanish. Well, Perez's mouth just like, ugh. And so they had a little chat to tell him where he lived and who he used to play football for and what schools did he go to and stuff like that. That was a good one. But the other one that was for memory what time, I'd flown over from Tenerife for the Christmas, but I had to be back by New Year. And we played Everton and it was a proper lacklustre game. I think we got beat 2-1 and Leighton Baines scored a cracking goal, a free kick. People do quite well against us. So after that, say a couple of drinks, I was with my older brother. The Heat wasn't with us that time, but I was with my older brother, Stevie Burns and Big Phil, and we went to Shark after we'd been in the lounge. And Evie walks outside, he's took a phone call, and he's come back in. He says, "You'll be smiling soon," because I was right annoyed that I'd flown back for a game and there was just a non-performance. And I says, "Why?" And he says, "One of your heroes is coming down to have a drink with us." I was like, whatever. 5 minutes later, Rob Lee walks in, doesn't he? And he joins us and buys us a few drinks and that. And then maybe it's 10 minutes after that, his Bez has rang, John Beresford, and he's joined us. So it was obviously drawing a big crowd. So they were staying in I think it was the Indigo Hotel. So the 2, 4, 5 of us went back down there, and we sat there till 3 o'clock in the morning. I could have sat there till 3 o'clock tomorrow morning, listening to their football stories and the crack that they had under in the Keegan era. And so I got back to my mother's about maybe 3:30 in the morning, forgetting that I had to get up at 6 to get a train to go to Edinburgh to watch the Hard Sibs derby and then fly from Edinburgh. So there was just no point in trying to sleep on the train, but it was just drink again with the same crowd, and off we went. So we had that, but I mentioned lastly the 2003 away game at Goodison. I was in Newcastle again, and I was out with the Heed, and he says, "Do you fancy going to the game tomorrow? Can you get JC to give us some tickets?" And we're in the town, and it was about 10 o'clock. We decided. We drove down, knew where we were going, parked the car up. Robert got sent off that game, and we were leading twice through Shearer, both penalties. And I'm sure Duncan Ferguson equalised for them. But again, it was when you're getting out the car. Remember, you have the little kids running up and saying, "Can I look after your car?" And they wanted a fiver to look after your car. And if you didn't give them it, they'd just scratch it as soon as you left or let the tyres do it or something. So it was just we're calling the Scouse Mackems and stuff like that. And but at least when you're in Liverpool, they are proper fans. And although they have historically had, well, more recently, historically probably about the same success as us. We had this discussion with Jeff, didn't we, Mitch, about whose club was the biggest. And he said Everton, and I must have been laughing for about 10 minutes. And I said, "I can't see your Liverpool shadow," and stuff like that, you know. So with the way they were, though, the proper hard working, well, when they do have jobs, the hard working people with a good sense of humour. So although we haven't had that much success against them away from home, I've always enjoyed playing Everton. Although the ground reminded us a lot of there was a lot of grounds at the time like that, but Tottenham's ground, White Hart Lane, you know, when you got the stanchions in the middle, especially in the way end, and you cannot see now. You know, you have to keep. It's terrible, and you're paying for it. You know, so it's one of those where it is what it is. But they've seemed to have dusted up and got the plastic seats in it a bit, and they've been trying to get a new stadium as long as we've been trying to get new owners, I think. So
I think I've mentioned it on the show before, but yeah, I mean, I don't think any of us. It's not a favourite of any of ours. You know, Goodison. It's like a shabby relative to Anfield. And to be honest, it's a bit of a micey ground to be outside. You know, on a cold winter's night outside the ground as you're coming out. I've seen a few bits of bother outside that ground because it's quite dark. It's obviously, as you can see, like Anfield, you know, in the middle of a housing estate, you know, streets and little back alleys off it, and it's one of those old-fashioned grounds which I love. Yeah, it's a very, very awkward ground, as you say, and if you end up behind one of those posts, it's a bit of a nightmare. So I don't think it's a favourite of ours, to be honest. I do want to point out a couple of other notable games. One which not even George or Steve Wilkinson was at, which was this one, Everton versus Newcastle in 1906, the English Cup final at Crystal Palace. Newcastle's team that day had the very famous Colin Vetch, of course, in it, but we didn't win that game. We lost 1-0 in that FA Cup game. But some famous names there, which I'm sure Newcastle fans who are historians will recognise. Colin Vetch, of course, Rutherford, Lawrence in goal. Some great names, a great team, but it just wasn't our day that day. A game that I want to mention from my perspective as well is one which involved Mirandina, of course. The Brazilian, the first Brazilian to play in English football, Francisco Inandi Lima da Silva, good pal of mine, and did an interview with him earlier in the year, which you can find on the 1980s players playlist. But yeah, he scored a cracking goal against Everton in a 2-2 draw at St St James's Park as well, and that was a cold, snowy day if I remember rightly. I can just see myself in the Gallagher corner. I had a red jumper on, jumping around, and I had hair. But it's another one of those games that I remember. Great days. I didn't have the sombrero on that day, but yeah, great times, great memories, and of course, for the younger fans who watch these shows, will probably remember Lejeune getting a double, of course, which got us an unlikely point down at Goodison in recent years, and yeah, Lejeune with you know, much deserved goal, and yeah, got us a point. So plenty of games we've talked about there. As always on the show, we always look at players who played for both teams, and we look at the celebrity fans. So I'm going to go through the celebrity fans first before we go through the players who played for both teams, and then get the lads to pick a squad each. So celebrity fans, we'll start with an easy one.
Oh, Sylvester. Rocky.
Sylvester Stallone, Rocky, of course, and yeah, John Rambo. Next one.
John Parrott.
John Virgo.
John Parrott. Yeah, John Parrott.
Sorry, John Parrott. Sorry.
John Parrott, yeah. Another familiar face coming up.
That's the man. He was in Rocky.
Tony Bellew.
Tony Bellew, the boxer. Of course, he fought and won his title at Goodison as well, which was achieving a boyhood dream.
Look at his face. Your face, Steve.
I might have this. Is he an athlete?
No. Well, he's an athlete of sorts. He's a sports star, yeah.
Is he another boxer?
Possibly. This wasn't the trick one.
Is it not? Is it Roy Jones?
It is. Well done, Roy Jones. Well done, Steve Hasty.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Neil did the work for you there by saying boxer. Well done.
Amanda Holden.
Amanda Holden, yeah, very you know, goes to a lot of the games as well.
Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney, supposedly an Everton fan, although I've never really seen a great deal of proof of that. But looking at a lot of the websites, he is a big Everton fan apparently.
Oh, he wrote the books.
Bill Bryson.
Bill Bryson, yeah. And the last one. This was the trick one.
No, you don't say.
Some singer from the
Well,
50s.
Crawford hair anyway.
He's got a. Well, it's a good photo. Have I done it again? Have I got one where I've got?
They've worked clue. Is he a singer? Must be a singer.
He's not a singer. Any ideas, lads?
No.
No.
No, you've got with this thing.
That's the fifth Beatle, Pete Best.
Oh,
No.
It is Pete Best, yeah.
Oh, yes.
As always, managed to find the most unlikely photo of Pete Best.
Yeah,
Keeping up my proud record of tricking you up on at least one, lads. Well done, though. You did well to get all those. Some good celebs there. So we'll move on now to the team. And plenty of choice, although I've got to be honest, we're struggling for a goalkeeper with this team, I think, unless you can surprise us with that. But we'll go through. Well done. We'll go through. We'll go through the players.
Gaza.
Gaza, of course, played for both teams.
Duncan.
Big Duncan, of course, who's doing so well down there on the sidelines. Did well as his caretaker manager stint as well.
Sylvain Distan.
We understand, yeah.
Pedro.
Peter Beardsley, of course. A lot of these players we've already mentioned today.
Gary Speed.
Gary Speed, God bless him.
Sheedy.
Kevin Sheedy.
Kevin Sheedy, of course.
John Bailey.
Yeah.
John Bailey, exactly, yeah. Good player, John Bailey at Newcastle.
What a pose.
Oh,
I've never. One for the older crowd.
Yeah.
Yes,
Steve,
Gordon.
I was going to say Steve. I was going to give Steve. I was going to give Steve Acey the cue there. He used to come to 9 Bar. We had him on as a guest.
Right, aye.
Jim Pearson.
Probably
Jim Pearson,
Better-
yeah.
better known at Newcastle, of course, for missing a penalty against Sunderland. I think that was his moment of glory at Newcastle. And one more. We've got one more, yeah.
Ginola.
yeah.
David Ginola, of course, again another player that we mentioned earlier on. So, lads, any volunteers for going first? Go on then, Stu. Name your team.
Right, before I do the team, me and Mitch are in a group chat with other people around the Middle East, and there's a bit of banter between the Liverpool and Everton fans. And today, come on, that there's 2,000 fans allowed in the ground. It's not a joke, this is true. It's 2,000 fans allowed in the ground. And they didn't know how to decide how to give them. In Liverpool, with the Liverpool postcode, there's only 5,200 and something Liverpool fans with season tickets with the Liverpool postcode. And Everton had 25,000 plus with a Liverpool postcode. So there was a bit of banter saying that like Everton were the People's Club of Liverpool. So I just thought I'd mention that. Right, the team, it was very similar to what got put on earlier. I can't remember who put it up before, but we had to cheat because I couldn't think of a keeper. I even looked on Google and I couldn't find one. So we'll have to cheat with Beardsley in goal for his little stint when we played West Ham.
Andy Gore put it up before.
Andy Gore, that's it was, yeah.
Andy Gore.
And his team was very similar to the one I'm going to reel off now because I wrote it down. I had Steve Watson at right back, John Bailey at left back with Distan and Pistoni in the middle. Then probably one of the best midfields I think I could mention with Bracewell holding back, Ginola and Sheedy on both wings, with Gaza and Gary Speed in the middle, which left big Duncan Ferguson up front. And I couldn't think of a manager. Gordon Lee was mentioned, but I'd love to manage that team. Like.
Great stuff. Excellent. Okay, we'll go along the bottom row. Mitch, you're next.
Right. I went with Pickford in goal because he's never played for Newcastle, but he's certainly obsessed with it. So I think that qualifies. And then my back four is Neil McDonald, Steve Watson at centre back because I think that was his best position. Sylvain Distan, who I wish he hadn't been so quick to rush off with his bank account and his sort code number because I think he was a classy centre back, had everything going for him. John Bailey because we got him at the end of his career, but you could see for the 2 years we had him how good he was. He made everything look easy. I love a footballer who makes everything look easy. They've always got time on the ball, never rushed, never hassled, just was playing way above his station. Then in midfield, I've gone with Bracewell, and then in front of them, Jeff Nolte, the first player who I ever asked for his autograph. In a cafe somewhere near the Magpie Club, if I remember right. It was his fault. He sent us. Then Gary Speed and Gaza, they make the midfield four. And then I've gone with Duncan Ferguson because I loved him to bits. What an absolute unity he was. And another striker who I love to bits, who never really gets the praise I think he's due, Imre Varadi.
Yeah.
And again, I used to love Imre. And then my choice as manager was Leo Allardyce, which is a bit like asking as if I want cholera or syphilis. So I think I'll have Lee.
Brilliant. Great stuff. Another good team. Steve Hasty.
I went for my utility goalkeeper. I put Stevie Watson in goal because he played in every other position for Newcastle anyway.
He was a good keeper at Wallsend as well, mate.
That's right. I went for three at the back. I went Pistoni, Distan and McDonald. I went for a midfield of Sheedy on one side, Ginola on the other, with Speed, Gascoigne and Bracewell. And up front, I put Beardsley and Louis Saha. And I kept Duncan Ferguson for our manager. I thought he's been a great player manager for them, and he's destined to be a manager at some point. I thought, we want to keep him in in the 12. There was no way I could go to Allardyce, no way, and there's no way I could go to Gordon Lee. So it was Big Duncan. I had to have him in somewhere.
I've got to be honest, I might have let you have Howard Kendall because he was a Geordie. I wouldn't have complained, and he was a great guy as well. Steve Wilkinson, over to you.
Right, well, a lot of the names have been said, but just to make a bit different, I had Beardsley in goal as well because I couldn't find. I went back to 1888 and tried to find players that played for Newcastle West End that might have been goalies, but Beardsley, because he's got that experience, had McDonald right back, Steve Watson centre half, the same as Mitch said. He played everywhere, and that was a good position. This time, Hottiger for left back, Mark Hottiger. I had Bracewell. This is a 4-3-3 formation. Bracewell, I had Gary Speed in, but just for completeness, let's put Gosling in midfield. Now, this one is one that Jordan might know. Jimmy Fell, who I only put him in because he played in the first game I ever saw in 1962 when he was in the Newcastle team then. So I can't remember much about him, but he I think probably played outside left, did he, George?
He did. Old-fashioned left winger. But another player that was bought at the wrong time in his career. He was a good player, but by the time we got him, he was on his way out.
He scored a decent few goals. He scored 49 games, scored 16 goals, which isn't bad.
Yeah.
And then up front, I had Verratti, Ferguson, and Ginola, and obviously, as I'm a fan, Gordon Lee manager.
Okay, George. Last but not least.
Well, David Lawson and Gore. I cheat a little bit because I knew David Lawson is my era, and I knew David had gone to Everton without playing very much for Newcastle, but he signed for Newcastle, and I think he did play a few games as well. Anyway, 4-2-4, Stephen Watson, George Heslop, Sylvain Distin, and Sanson. In the midfield, Bracewell and Speed. Front four, Beardsley, Ferguson, Gascoigne, and Ginola. And the manager, Steve, I took Kendall because, again, for the Geordie connection, for the Newcastle connection. I hear lots of people claiming the Geordies, including my current manager. But never mind, Kendall could, he really did love the area.
Top man, gentleman of football, and great show, great teams, lads. I had Zara on last Friday on the Free Amigos, and of course she gave us a trailer, George. I'm sure you've probably seen it by now, but We Are the Geordies is out on the 11th of December. We're into December now. Where's this year gone? It's flown round despite COVID, and We Are the Geordies is coming out. It's going to be available on all streaming platforms. As I say, it's been made by Zara. If you want to find out a bit more about it, you can visit the website. Very easy, wearethegeordies.com. Film kicks off on the 11th of December via most of the streaming platforms, but George is a bit of a star of the show, and here's a little clip of George in the film.
Actually, I brought that, and somewhere that is the rosette that my mother made for my father when he went to the 1950 Cup final against Arsenal. He hitchhiked all the way to London.
Cool. Put the rosette away and then give us the...
Okay.
Because I don't want that to blow away.
No, that's fine. Right.
Tell us about this.
This is called a corncrake, but we're in the northeast we call it a rattle. And in the 40s and 50s, this is what people took to support the team. And this is the noise it made. Can you imagine if 52,000 people at the end of the game who twirl their scarves twirled one of these instead? It would be incredible. But I don't think we'd even get them in the ground now.
Really good.
Great clip, George. Great to see you. It'll be even better to see you on the big screen. Are you looking forward to it, or are you a bit nervous?
No, very much looking forward to it, Steve. I have to tell you, it's been such a coming out now with all the rubbish we're having to put up with, and the fact that we're in an age group where we can't do anything, we just got to stay at home. It's been great. It's been lovely, and meeting some of the people again. Some of them I'd never met, but now I've met them all on screen, and there's a definite move to try and everybody meet up when it's possible. So no, I'm really looking forward to it, Steve. It's been great to be part of it, and I've been a lucky person in doing lots of fantastic things, but I've really enjoyed this one. It's been really a thrill. It has. And to have Steve sitting beside us at the matches as well is a thrill. And a couple of times Neil came over, so yeah, I'm absolutely looking forward to it, Steve. Can't wait.
Fantastic. Keep an eye out for it, everybody who watches the show. I'm sure it'll be great. Quick happy birthday to David Batty, great player at Newcastle. A lot of people feel as if he didn't go, the full end and help us to, win the league. But I thought he was superb, great player.
Great player.
Wonderful player, and we're blessed to have him. Bit of a recluse these days. Nobody really sees him. Great story about him as well. With it being the retro show, he still, after all those years, used to bring his boots in a carrier bag. He didn't actually have a sports bag. He always used to have a carrier bag with his stuff in, like a Sunday League footballer. But he always said he would drift back off into obscurity after his career, and he's been a man of his word. Hydora as well celebrates today, so happy birthday to him. As always, we also give a quick flash of the Three Amigos flyer for this weekend, and John from Jab has come up with this one. Can you name the film, lads?
God. Is that? No, I thought it was Back to the Future there for a minute.
Back to the Future, aye.
The film's actually called The Wraith. You'll never... You'll all probably be watching it now. But yeah, it's called The Wraith, so big shout out to John from Jab. He comes up with some great ideas. I don't prompt him, he just comes up with them. So I sometimes get like an inbox of about 5 different flyers when he's bored at work, and we never know what he's going to get, which is great. So it's never planned. We're also doing the campaign this month called Think Before You Tweet, which is very important. We're all part of social media. Whether it's Twitter or whether it's Facebook or whatever, but Twitter seems to have a real issue, in general, not just amongst our fan base. And there's been a few of the panelists on our show that's been attacked on social media for just giving their opinion on Newcastle United. So all we're asking this month is people think before the tweet, and just be a little bit kinder to people throughout the month of December. It's been a hard year. Some people have lost their jobs. Some people have lost relatives. It's not been a pleasant time. And sometimes you sending that tweet to that person can be the final straw, can be the straw that broke the camel's back, and we don't want that amongst our fan base. So we're just asking people to think before they tweet. We're going to play out with the video. I just want to thank, as always, the lads for joining us. Thanks to George, thanks to Steve Wilkinson, thanks to Steve Hasty, thanks to Mitch, thanks to Stu. Thanks to Stu Penman. Great to have you on, guys. I'll be back tomorrow night at 6 o'clock with Super Mac and Gibbo, and I will be back with Steve and Mitch on Friday night for the Three Amigos. Until then, take care, lads. Good night. God bless everybody.
Good night.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Think before you tweet.
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 Please just think before you tweet.
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 Think before you tweet. Think before you tweet.